let's get this party started, shall we? 大家好，我是魏希英教授。Ampetuken de Yushkinya Wachiyakami. I hope I said that right. I am happy to see you here today. I am mixing it up a little bit by filming from my office, as you can see. Oh man, I look terrible. Look at this. I got this turkey waddle going. Never mind. Focus. I need to lose some weight. As I promised, I'm going to share with you from Read, Listen, Tell. Why does it look backward on my screen? Well, we'll fix that later. This is from Read, Listen, Tell. And as you know, I assigned my beloved students some reading. And I figured in order to salt your oats, that is to kind of tempt you into getting into this book, I was going to share a little bit about this Plains Cree artist. He is a comic book writer, which is kind of cool. If you turn to our textbook on page 165, you can read about him, and you can read his comics on the following pages. Isn't that cool? Check it out. Woo! Yes, all right. So here it's called Excerpt from Darkness Calls. And I'm not going to read the comics, I'm going to read the introduction. Okay, here we go. I'm talking too much. Kenneth Keewatin Sanderson is a Plains Cree artist and comic book creator. At 7 feet tall, he names the Incredible Hulk as one of his childhood heroes. Now, I'm not sure what that's all about. Is he 7 feet tall? Or is the Incredible Hulk 7 feet tall? Or are they both 7 feet tall? I don't know. Focus. So, let's see. Incredible Hulk, one of his childhood heroes. He has written several graphic novels for Healthy Aboriginal Network. This is up in Canada, remember? A publishing house that commissions stories on health issues to be released to indigenous communities. 50,000 copies of Darkness Calls, a story that addresses youth suicide, were distributed across Canada. He also illustrates an animated series and designs computer games. Sanderson credits the experiences of a young cousin as the inspiration for Kyle's stories and draws Cree culture heroes as though they have been generated from the comic book universe. That's nice. Let me see. Traditional comic book heroes and villains are easily identifiable as polar opposites, as if good is necessarily the opposite of evil. In contrast, in Cree storytelling, as evidenced by Sanderson's depictions of the Cree trickster Wishakijack. Sometimes they call him Whiskey Jack. I can't even pronounce it right. Wishakijack. Yeah, that's what the Suyepis, the Washichu, call him, Whiskey Jack, because they can't say it either. But Wishakijack. And the cannibal monster Wetigo. A more nuanced understanding of power, danger, and resolution is explored. While a traditional comic book story might recognize the cannibal monster as villain, Kyle has to fight bigger demons. He has to assert his desire to live, despite the disrespect shown to him by the school system and his unhappy family. While friends can reach out to him, or Wishakijack, the guise of a visiting elder, might stop by to support him in this struggle, it is Kyle who has to realize his own power to oppose those who threaten him. Wow, I got so fat. I gotta do something about this big old belly. Never mind, we gotta stay focused. I'm looking at myself on the camera. I look awful. Never mind, keep going. So this is on page 165, and then we got some of the comics on 166, 167. Have a look because it's comics. You got no excuse if this shows up on the test or something. Next, little bit of reading for the next story. This is a Woodlands Cree person, Solomon Ratt. I think I actually know him. Hung out with his son or nephew, Solomon Ratt, R-A-T-T. Interesting name. He's got a story on page 170 called, don't know how to pronounce it, Motha Nita Indian. Again, he's a Woodland Cree, or sometimes they say Woods Cree, from Stanley Mission, Saskatchewan. Ooh, I used to live close to there. I lived in Prince Albert. Let me just read. I'm just going to read the first part, and I'm not going to read the Indian language part. Maybe I should. Let me see. I'm going to scroll it up because it's actually easier to read on my computer. Now, bear with me because I don't speak Cree. I speak Nishnabé, which is very similar. It says here, Kayash Mana Kaki Awa Sisiwian Oti Mana Niki Nitawi Ayami Chikanan Kishtapa Kishtapinanik Oti Mana I Nitawi Kishkin Wahama Koshiyak. Anyway, that's my attempt at Cree. It's been a long time since I hung out with a Cree. Used to sweat with them up in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, in an area. Never mind, I'm talking too much. Let me just read. So it says here, Solomon Ratt is a Woods Cree man from Stanley, Mission, Saskatchewan, and a renowned language teacher who is the author of, among other texts, Woods Cree Stories, 2014. In 2006, Ratt told this story in Cree to transcriber Jacinta Laviolette as part of a morphology course taught by linguist Arok Woven Gray. This story is an example of traditional genre of storytelling, of funny little stories called, ooh man, here's another one, Wawiya Tachi Moinisa, that are amusing, based on personal experience, and gently self deprecating. While the genre is traditional, it is clear that the content can be contemporary. Ratt tells a story of his time at residential school in which he was reluctant to take the role of the Indian in a game called Cowboys and Indians. Residential schools as part of a larger federal policy of cultural assimilation and genocide. We talked about this before. Aggressively prevented children from speaking their languages or identifying in any way with their indigenous nations. Paradoxically, the school supervisor insists that the young Solomon call himself Indian, the colonial misnomer indiscriminately applied to all indigenous peoples in North America. So there's a whole lot of fei hua going on in here. What I mean by that is Chinese. That fei hua means wasted words. It just means when you say something that's Captain Obvious. Well, at least to us anyway. Let's keep reading. Examine the sentence structure in this story. What indications do you have that this story is told orally from one person to another? Look at the Cree version of the stories. What words were originally spoken in English with no translation in Cree? Why is Indian not translated into Cree? All right, let me read. I'm just going to read the first part, maybe the first paragraph, first two. Long ago, when I was a child, we used to go to school over there in Prince Albert, where we attended school. Every year we'd start in September. We'd go off to attend school there at the residential schools, as they were called. That's where we went. It was called Prince Albert Indian Student Residences. That's what it was called. And while we were there, And while there, the children used to be really desolate, and they used to really cry for their parents, missing them a great deal. Well, we also used to have a great deal of fun every time Saturday came around, for at that time we used to watch movies. We used to call them picture shows. Those were the ones. We really used to have fun when we finished watching them, for we'd go out and play outside just like we were, well, we used to play pirates and also cowboys and Indians. That's how we used to play. And at the time, as we were growing up, we really used to, we had a very poor opinion of ourselves. We used to be told that we shouldn't live like Cree people. That's the way we were raised there at that school. So that's again on page 170. I look so goofy. I'm just making faces at the camera. 170. Have a look at it in our textbook. And the other one I'm going to bother you with, I believe, is the following story. It's another Plains Cree. It's called The Republic of Tricksterism by Paul Seesequasis, page 172. Wow, 11 minutes and 29 seconds. We can do this. I'm going to back up because I'm starting to break my camera. I look terrible. Oh man, this is what happens when you get old. Never mind, focus. The Republic of Tricksterism on page 172 is something else I want you to read for our class. Paul Seesequasis is the editor or the first editor of Aboriginal Voices magazine, founded in 1993, and for several years was the author of Thetis Press, the longest established Indigenous publishing house in Canada. He released his first novella, Tobacco Wars, in 2010. Like the main character in his story, Sissequasis is the child of a Cree mother and Ukrainian Canadian father, losing the inheritance promised him as a descendant of the signatories of Treaty 6 because his status Indian mother married a non status man. We talked about this a little bit. Remember what I mentioned before, something a Bill C-31 up in Canada, because originally, I gotta close my door. I hear people out in the hallway making a bunch of dang noise. Hang on. So, as I was saying, Bill C-31, which was back in early 2000s in Canada, kind of helped to reconcile this problem or get rid of it. But if you were an Indian woman, you married a non Indian man, you lose your status as an Indian, according to the Canadian government. Now, let me keep reading. So, because of that, your kids don't have status either. But let me keep reading. So, Sissequasis is the child of a Cree mother and a Ukrainian Canadian father, losing the inheritance promised him as a descendant of the signatories of Treaty 6 because of his status. Indian mother married a non status man. The reverse would not have been true. Had his father been status and his mother non status, Sissequasis would have retained his legal identity as an Indian, according to the Canadian government. Also, like the main character of the story, Sissequasis is qualified to regain his status. Oh, here's another one, Bill 31. I thought it was C-31. Whatever. Which passed in 1985. I think there's two of them. One is called Bill 31 and the other is called Bill C-31. In this biting, humorous story, Sissequasis critiques the divisive effects of legislation upon his community and the misuse of the status card. That's in our e-learning, right? Issued to those registered as Indians in Canada under the Indian Act, as the measure of who is Indigenous and who is not. He demonstrates the gender disparity embedded in the Indian Act that forced from its inception from 1875 to 1885 allowed only men with status cards to be able to pass on their status, including the right to live on reserves, to their wives and children. This means that women had the legal rights as status Indians only if their fathers or husbands had status cards. When the first person narrator refers to himself as a crossbreed mutt, page 174, the author makes the point that some with status have similar bloodlines, although different legal entities. Chief Toby, for example, is referred to as a mixed race pureblood, page 173. Likewise, the narrator himself refers to himself as an urban mixed blood. He does not call himself Métis or half-breed, often considered to be a separate community with his own history of disinheritance. However, the main character celebrates Uncle Morris, modeled on the famous Métis leader and community organizer Malcolm Norris, a trickster described as capable of transforming into a termite in order to undermine political structures. In what ways does Sissequasis draw on the Cree story of the cannibal Wahpeton to criticize these same political structures? Why does he title this story The Republic of Tricksterism? Ooh, I'm going to hurry up because it's 16 minutes and 33 seconds. Got to get this done. Going to read the first 3 paragraphs and then I'm going to let you follow the rest on your own. Here we go. We were urban mixed bloods. Shopping malls and beer parlors were our sacred grounds. Reaching adolescence in the 70s, the Sex Pistols and the Clash provided the tribal drums. Fallen between the seams and exiled from the reserves, we were prisoners of the bureaucratic apartheid of red tape and parliamentary decrees. Our tribal links were obscure, our colonial banishment confirmed by the Indian Act. White bureaucrats and tribal politicians alike were our oppressors. We are heading toward self-government, proclaimed Toby, the Grand Chief of the fermentation of Saskatchewan Indian nations, as he shook the hand of the Saskatchewan Premier Alan Blakeney. In his hands, Toby, the Grand Chief, held a paper promising tens of millions of dollars, but that money and power were only destined for a select few. Sound familiar? The Grand Chief's vision was obscured by power and long-legged blondes. He denounced Indian women who married white men, while at the same time blonde secretaries and assistants crossed their legs in his plush office at the FSIN. Ooh, some pretty powerful indictment. Have a look at this stuff in our textbook. That's all for now. 18 minutes and 21 seconds. We're going to stop it because I got to go to a faculty meeting. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time.